Good morning. Welcome to The Way It Was. Today our guest is Mr. Lucian B. Jackson, the son of Lucian B. Jackson, Scottish-Irish descent, and his mother was Lucille Hargis, who was, he said, full-blood English that came over from London. Good morning, Mr. Jackson. Welcome to The Way It Was. Mr. Jackson has a lot of history, and if possible, we're going to, I know 30 minutes won't be long enough to get all of it in, so we may do a continuation of your history. Mr. Jackson, you told me you remembered the history coming down about your parents, that they met in around Callisburg, Texas, and they married at Gainesville, in the Gainesville area, and then they came to the Cornish Indian Territory. And you said your family lived at Cornish Indian Territory.
My earlier family, yes. I was born in Cornish.
Okay, and at that time you said there wasn't even a Ringling, right?
No. There wasn't a Ringling until John Ringling and Jake Hammonds and a few other rich people built a railroad through here. There was no Wilson at all. There was just a water station here. Train would stop here in Wilson to get water and rest stop, and there was no city of Wilson at all. It was known as Dillard or Hewitt, old Hewitt in those days. But Ringling was originally a little town of Cornish, Indian Territory, you know. But when John Ringling and Jake Hammonds and a few other rich people built a railroad from Ardmore to Ringling, that's as far as the track went. It ended there in Ringling, the railroad track. And I remember, never will forget, the depot was the first building they built where the city of Ringling is now.
Oh, really?
There was no Ringling, it was Cornish. But they built the depot first. And I was about 4 or 5 years old when I'd go down there and watch a train come in. And I'll never forget, everybody was riding horseback then, or driving buggies or carriages. And when that train come in and started blowing that whistle, them horses all broke loose and run. Just took off. And I never will forget, it's a little bit corny, but in this depot there, they had restrooms. Men over the men's side and women over the women's side. Well, I went in there one day and was checking on seeing what them people was going in them little rooms for. And I saw that man relieving himself in that bowl of water. Well, us kids have been drinking water out of there.
Oh, dear God. You didn't know what a bathroom was.
Well, we had a bathroom outside, down in the back of the house.
In the toilet, the bath.
Yeah. And I never will forget one time. This is a little bit corny, and it's not filthy. I'm not talking to it about being filthy. But
Except the water was filthy in the bowl.
But I was sitting in that outdoor toilet down there reading the Citizen Roebuck catalog, which was hanging on the wall there by one of the two holes. Well, there's some fella come in there with a fishing rod, and he was fishing over in that other hole. And I said, "Mister," I said, you can't catch no fish in that hole." He said, "No," but he said, "I dropped my sandwich a while ago."
Oh, dear. That was before the days of the bathrooms and all the sanitation. I hope he didn't eat the sandwich. You said you told me that there were 9 children in your family.
Yes.
And there's Waltine.
Yeah.
Okay. And Vida. She married Foot Dillard.
Foot Dillard, yes. He was a millionaire oil man from the Dillard area. They named the oil field up here at Hewitt, Old Hewitt. When they hit oil up there, they named it Dillard, town of Dillard.
And that's where the Dillard and Jackson ranches came in. Is that correct?
Well, my dad had been in the ranching business all of my life. Out there west of Ringling, was Cornish at that time, west of Cornish during the Indian Territory days. He was in the cattle business. And my older sister married Foot Dillard. Of course, Foot Dillard was an older man than her, and he'd already been married once. But he married my older sister, and we lived there. I run the Dillard and Jackson ranches for about 40 years, just a mile this side of Ringling.
Mm-hmm.
And we showed cattle all over the United States. I was on the road biggest part of the time with a herd of cattle.
You told me also that the Dillard home where you grew up was a 3-story home just this side of Ringling, on the north side of the road.
Ringling, yes. It's still there, but it's locked up and nobody lives there anymore.
And well, you also told me that you mentioned cattle. Didn't you help your father with cattle on the Chisholm Trail?
No. That was before my time.
That was before your time. Okay. Yeah. Your father drove cattle on the Chisholm Trail. Okay.
He and his older brother made the trail drive several times. They drove cattle to Kansas from down in our country, Texas and Oklahoma.
Well, okay. The other children was Jackie.
Let's see, I mentioned Vida, Walter and Vida.
Yes.
And then Jackie was next, and Monty, and Oweda. They were all older than me. And there was
Cub
and Dixie.
And Dana.
And Dana.
Dana.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, you told me that you lived on the ranch and you did regular farm chores at that time, but it was cattle work. You were mainly worked with the cows.
Oh, yes.
And
we didn't do any farming hardly at all.
Just ranching.
We did bale prairie hay, grass. We had regular native prairie grass, and we'd cut and bale that for the hay for the cattle. But we didn't do any farming hardly at all.
Okay. You said that your job mainly, your dad woke you up, whether it's time to get up or not, every day at 5 o'clock.
Yes, sir.
And you said you were out on the fence line with him by 6, 7.
Back riding after the cattle. We had to check on the cattle every day, and we was running about 1,200 head of cattle at the time, and we had several pastures to ride. And it would take us nearly all day to ride all the pastures. We'd sometimes get right back close to the ranch house, we'd come and eat, and we'd take off again. I was horseback most of my early life.
And I think we have a picture of you on that, with you on horse, the large picture there underneath.
Oh yeah, that horse rearing up with me?
Yes, I think it was...
Bulldog Bobby was the horse's name.
I think I had it on the stack of the second one. It was a large picture. Yes. And I think we have it before we can show it here. Yes, there it is, when you were just a young boy.
Yeah, that's it. I was in high school there.
And so that's what you did most of the day?
Yeah, I was horseback most of the time. I wasn't in school.
While we also have that on pictures, we had a recipe that Belle Starr gave your Granny Jackson.
Yes.
And you told me that Belle Starr was being held in jail in Fort Smith, Arkansas?
Fort Smith, Arkansas.
Would you tell about that? And while he's showing that on the screen, that's a picture of Belle Starr. Would you tell about how your grandmother met Belle Starr and what she was doing in the area and all?
Well, Belle Starr was a lady outlaw, you know. She was, I don't know, some kind of in trouble all the time. And I never will forget my dad telling about the time they had her arraigned up in court in Judge Parker, hanging Judge Parker's court in Arkansas, Fort Smith, Arkansas. And they had her arraigned up in court over there. And my dad happened to be there with 6 other cowboys, and they were arraigned up in Judge Parker's court for killing sheep out there on the Mud Creek, our old Mud Creek Ranch out at Ringling. Well, my dad and 6 or 7 more, well, there's more than that, but there's a lot of them escaped. He didn't go to Fort Smith to the court. And I never will forget there was 7 of them there standing before the judge. The judge told them, said, you all are all citizens of the United States, aren't you? One old boy standing back there, he couldn't read nor write. He said, oh, no, Judge, we live over here across the river. He lived in Indian Territory.
So this candy recipe that is on the screen, then your grandmother was called in as a witness in the trial, and I think someone told me that, and Belle Starr your grandmother thought Belle Starr was such a sweet lady,
yeah.
And Belle gave her this candy recipe.
Yeah, Belle Starr was in jail waiting trial, and Granny Jackson was over there with them sheep killers. They was all over in court, in Judge Parker's court. Well, Granny went back there in the jail and visited with Belle Starr quite a bit. And she said, oh, that nice lady said she couldn't be an outlaw. Kept bragging about that nice lady. Well, Belle Starr was pretty, they said. I never did see her, but it's before my time.
Okay, on your school, you told me that you went to school in Ringling, and you also told how you were quite athletic at that time.
Yes.
Tell me about your accomplishments in being athletic at the Ringling school.
I was on a football team, of course, high school football team, and I made All-State 2 years there in a row, and then I made All-State in basketball, and I broke 2 or 3 track records running a quarter of a mile in track. And I was going to go to school, law school in Oklahoma City. Well, I started going to school up there, and my dad, I told him I was learning to be a lawyer, you know. I was studying law. Pop says, something like that, you know. What do you want to be a lawyer for? I said, the lawyers and doctors are the crookedest professions they are. And he was putting them down. And I told him, I wanted to try to do something worthwhile in my life. He said, worthwhile? Stealing and robbing people? That ain't worthwhile. He said, you've got plenty to do right here on this ranch. He said, now you go saddle up and get out after them cows.
So you went 2 years at the Oklahoma State Law School, and then you went 2 years at...
I went to Oklahoma A&M then. It was called Oklahoma A&M.
Instead of
called Oklahoma State now,
yes.
You know.
And
I went up there 2 years, and they run me off. They said I was too smart for them. That's what my dad said.
So you came back to the cows.
I came back and started running the ranch again.
Well, did you ever cook out, were you ever a chuck wagon cook?
Well, I made a practice of it.
Someone told me that you'd made a practice of it.
Yeah.
I think I think you brought some pictures. Several of you being a cook, and in your later years being chili cook-off and cowboy. Cowboy coming up with your own recipes, and then I think on the screen now is a picture of you where you made a news article in the Armorite of when you won the chili cook-off.
That was in the chili cook-off.
And
I won third. I think I believe there was 34 entries that time, and I won third. But there was a doctor and a lawyer was first and second. When I told my dad about it, yeah, I told you. He'd always come up with some kind of an answer.
When a doctor and lawyer was involved.
Yeah.
Well, also, I think you brought another picture. I think there's another one of you where you won another chili cook-off. In fact, you had several. I don't know.
I entered several times down at close to Marietta.
There's one. Now, that's one where the hole in the wall, right?
Yeah, that's right. It was a hole in the wall down there. They called it the hole in the wall. It was a little old camp, covered wagon camp. People would camp in there, and it was just north of Marietta.
And it got to be a big thing. I don't know if they still have it or not, but it got to be a big thing during the 80s.
They used
early
to invite
80s.
me every year, and There's one time down there, I served two big cookers, hold about 60 pounds, and I had two of them. And instead of entering the chili cook-off, I just served son of a gun stew. S.O.B. or son of a gun stew, that's what it was called. It was all kinds of meats, offals of a beef. You know what offals are? Liver and heart and tongue and sweetbreads and mountain oysters.
You put that in stew?
Yeah, that was stew.
I'm proud you did.
Well, that was, no, you'd be surprised. It was really a nutritious food.
Okay, then you also came up and with your own and patented, I think, the tamale, a real tamale on a stick. I think you brought a picture of that. Yes,
you got it there somewhere.
Yes, we have it, and we're going to show it on the screen for the people to see.
It's a real hot tamale on a stick, and it's deep fried instead of boiled and wrapped in a shuck.
There it is. That's when you first look at it, people that are familiar with a corn dog would think it's a corn dog, but it was a real tamale on a stick.
The cornmeal batter that's on that is ground up hominy. It's ground, of course, it'll get ground hominy with cornmeal, and that's the batter that you put, and you make your chili, regular red chili, and you run it on a stick and freeze it. And of course, it's hard when you dip it in that batter and fry it. And I got a patent on the thing, and I sold it to some people over there that lived at Ringling. Hogue was the name. A boy and a girl, their names was Pogue. Well, they sent that, I sold them the idea for $3,500. And they sent it to her father that lived in St. Louis, Missouri. Well, them people up there, they eat hot tamales like I'd eat horse apples here. They didn't know what hot tamales were up there.
So it didn't go over.
Didn't go over at all. And when I asked them about what they was going to do with it, they didn't know, and they didn't seem to care. But they done spent $3,500 on it, and I wanted them to go on with it because I'd done tried it in 2 or 3 different places. Over at Ardmore, I had a little drive-in cafe over there, served them for a while, and they got in such a demand that I didn't want to go into business, so I quit making them. But it's a real hot tamale on a stick. All the ingredients are a regular hot tamale, but the only thing is you deep fry it. And then when you get ready to eat it, you toast it a little bit to eat it.
That sounds great. Well, you know, LB, you've done a lot of things. You write poetry, and you taught art classes for about 40 years. And this morning we're not going to have time to go into everything about it, but I think you also brought a clipping about where your art placed in the area. The viewers, the citizens, selected you as one of the winners, along with, I think, Jim Dodson. This was before Jim Dodson, I think, started his sculpturing. I believe.
Exchange National Bank had an art show.
Yes.
And that's when we were there.
And there it is, the annual Western Art Show.
Yeah, there he is. There's my old friend.
And that's Jim Dodson there with you.
Yeah.
Okay, after that show, you lost your eyesight, and you were almost totally blind for a while. Then you had a lens implant. And the lens implant, there you are, shows the lens implant. It was a new at the time being of hearing about a lens implant, but that gave you back your sight in one eye. Now one eye was completely gone.
This eye is completely gone.
So, but you went back to teaching art classes for a while, didn't you?
Yeah. And do you know, I'm proud to say it, but one of my students has a an art store and shop. He teaches art too out in Tucson, Arizona. And now I believe now he's a better artist than I ever was.
And he does not photographs, portraits.
Portraits, yeah.
Yes. Is that Keith Murray from Hilton?
Yeah, that's him.
I thought it was.
Keith Murray.
Because I know he did a portrait of Chuck Norris and one of Vince Gill and different ones. I think Reba McEntire I'd read where he had made presentations.
Did you know him?
Yes, I met him. And so, well, that's great to know that someone that you had helped to get started had gone on to...
he was just 14 when I started teaching him.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I think I have a poem here that you wrote about the ladies that took care of you when you had your eye surgery.
Yes, yeah.
The Ladies in White by Lucian B. Jackson. We'll close off with this morning by, I'll read this poem to you. And to the ladies in white, God bless you all. You are always there at each beck and call, with a smile like a breath of fresh air, and your soft touch and loving care. For the ladies in white, which we should all be proud, though appreciative thanks are seldom loud. From the weak and sick there is often a nod, for you ladies of mercy, sent by God. Many never know the sacrifices made by these ladies in white who come to aid. We who are ailing and need their assist to soften a pillow to help us exist. Our Lord is with these ladies in white when they visit those bedridden at night. To check on the needs of those who are there, their job is thankless, and few may care. My tribute is great to these ladies in white, for these humanitarians whose smile is bright. Their willing help, like a tonic to convalescing, will assure them always of our Lord's blessing. Thank you today for joining us, and remember to join us at a later date for more of Lucian B. Jackson's life story and his interesting tales of early day history in this area. And of course, most of you know him as L.B. Jackson. Welcome to The Way It Was. This morning we are continuing a segment of the life of Mr. Lucian B. Jackson, and he's going to be telling the way it was. He just told me what the B stood for. The B stands for Bonaparte. He said that he didn't really particularly care for that, and most people know him as just L.B. Jackson. So join us this morning, and L.B., I want you to tell about, you were telling me about your father coming to Oklahoma. Go ahead and tell me about how old he was. And
well, he was 40 years old, and my mother was 20 when they got married. And they raised 9 children of their own, plus 3 that they just took in and raised. Orphans, you might say. But they came up from out of Texas, and they were called Sooners because the Indian Territory in those days wasn't supposed to be populated with white people. It was all Indians.
And this was, you told me, what nation was this called?
It was this part of Oklahoma was called the Choctaw Chickasaw Nation. There's 5 civilized tribes in those days: Choctaw, Chickasaw, Cherokee, Creek, and Seminole. And that was, the Indian Territory was allotted to those 5 tribes of Indians. And they were all allotted up to a section of Oklahoma. It was divided up into 5 different sections. And of course, those Indians were, most of them were illiterate and couldn't read nor write, and they'd sometimes trade their allotment for a quart of whiskey or maybe a cow or a horse or something like that. They didn't know the value of anything. Those early day Indians didn't. And that's where the Sooners got their name. They came in and just stole this area from the Indians. The white people did. They were called Sooners.
They came into the Indian Territory across Red River from Montague County, Texas.
Well, from all over Texas, all over the Southwest.
But your family came from Montague.
Yeah. My mother and dad got married in Callisburg, Texas. That was east of Gainesville. Let's see, yes, east, over there somewhere by Gainesville. And my dad was 40 years old, and my mother was 20 when they got married.
That's what you was telling me. And then on this, did they go directly to the Cornish area when they came to Indian Territory?
Yes, there wasn't no such town as Ringling then.
And so on Cornish, was Cornish named after a person? It was
Family.
The Cornish
family. The name of Cornish, John Cornish.
Okay, that's the same Cornish family that went on to Hilton then and had the Cornish Ford Motor Company.
They were relatives, yes.
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 And okay, on this, LB, you through your years and with you working on the ranches, since you had you managed the Jackson Dillard ranches for 40 years.
Yes.
Because previously you told on a previous showing you told how your sister had married Foot Dillard. Okay, you love to cook and you love to visit with the cowhands because you were the cowman on the ranch. Is that how you got started writing the poems, sitting out around the campfire at night?
Something like that, yes.
Okay, you had you wrote this beautiful ballad of Estrelita.
Yes.
Now that is about a horse.
Yes.
And you must have really loved that horse.
That animal, well, it belonged to my father. Estrelita did. She was a mare, chestnut mare, and she wouldn't outrun very often. He made a lot of money with her running her over the country. And us kids on Sunday, when Papa and Mama were out visiting somewhere, us kids would steal this mare out and take her down in the brush somewhere and run horse races with her. Man, we made some money too.
Well, I think I will, it's a lengthy poem, but I'm going to rapidly go through some of it. I may not go through all the verses, but I think this will bring back some memories to you. It said, come all you men, you who have a yen, for horses that are fast. There are those who won while others run, and some who could not last. Come gather round, let's all sit down and have a drink or two. My hands may shake, my voice may break, but I'll tell this tale to you. 'Twas a race of a burning pace, and red roan Ebb was there, between a stud of steel dust blood and a golden chestnut mare. In a Texas town where sports abound, remembered well by all, in the burning sun the race was won, and many yet recall. The famous mare with silken hair, whose friends were there to greet her. She was tall and slim and clean of limb, and they called her Estrelita. I bet my dough, and I saw them go. I watched the race all through. I checked the clock from tick to tock, and I'll swear the time was true. The red roan flare was stabled there, the fastest in the west. The long, the tall, he beat them all, and the quarter was his best. The light red mare with shining hair that glistened in the sun, with silver and gold in her tail's soft fold, a skein the gods had spun. At the starter's shaft they led them out, the track was lightning fast. With a short parade all bets were laid, and the race at last. The crowd cheered long and loud, and then a great moan, for no equine who broke behind had ever caught that roan. The racing mare with satin hair came out with a leap and a bound. Though her start was slow, the jock bent low as she began to cover ground. And then at the end of the poem, I see here it says, if there is a place where they race in some holy land, from where below brave hearts will go with a great judge in the stands. Sports of yore and champs galore will all be there to greet her. The chestnut mare with golden hair, they called her Estrelita. So I think that horse meant a lot to you.
Yeah, sure did.
And yeah, I'm sure you can recall.
That horse meant a lot to my dad. He was an old racehorse man. Well, he was in the cattle business and the thoroughbred horse business. And he raised several good running horses. Two of them I never will forget. Stray Leaves and Wild Rube went to Canada to a man that was in a horse race business up there. And I think maybe they run second twice, but they won all their other races. And that man kept writing my folks, wanting to know if he'd sell them some more horses. Well, Papa was selling them horses about as fast as he could raise them right here to people in this area, and Papa kind of wanted to keep them here. in Indian Territory. That was Indian Territory back there then.
So this mare was quite a prize to your dad and to your kids.
You bet.
Well, I can see, and you probably wrote this poem many years later as you sat around recalling the events of that horse.
Well, you see, I raised horses too.
Oh, did you?
I used to manage the Dillard Jackson ranches, just a mile this side of Ringling.
Mm-hmm. That's what you were telling me, where you grew up. Yes.
An old 3-story house. Well, I was raising quarter horses and cattle, of course, and I had some pretty good running horses. I was pretty well known in the country and I'd let the guys borrow a horse or two. I wouldn't let anybody know that I was there, but I'd go down there Connie and Disc guys and watch these races. And he's outrunning everybody in North Texas. He'd take that horse down there. They wouldn't know the horse because they didn't see me. And man, we made a wad of money.
Well, you also told me you ran a feed store in Ringling.
Yeah.
And you married a girl from the Ringling area or the Wilson area.
Yeah, my first wife was from Ringling.
Okay.
She was 16 and I was 21 when we married.
And what was her name?
Her name was Gilcrease. Elzada Gilcrease. Elzada's an odd name, but that's it.
Okay, and y'all had 2 or 3 children?
We had 3.
3 children.
I had a boy and 2 girls. Well, I've still got them, and they've got families too.
And what are their names?
The boy's named Larry B. LB.
Carry on the LB.
Yeah. And then there's Dixie and Judy. Dixie Sullivan is her married name, and Judy Balcom is her name. And they all got families.
Okay, and you operated the feed store in Ringling?
For about 2 years, I operated the feed store and was doing a whale of a business. Why I sold out, I don't know. But I sold out, and the man that bought it, he didn't know anything about the business, and he didn't know how to gain customers and friends. And everybody in that area knew me from all their life. And man, I had a whale of a business. But I was getting tired, so I just sold out. I got a whale of a price for it, and that old boy stayed open about a month. He shut it down.
Shut it down. Okay. Some of the stores in Ringling during those days, you told how everybody went to town on Saturday.
Oh, yes.
It worked all during the week, but they went to town on Saturday. You were telling me about the names of the businesses in Ringling that were there, and about some of the doctors, and how Ringling had a hotel and had a theater. And you told about J.H. Morris and Sons Grocery, Monk Dulaney Cotton Gin, L.D. Thomas Dry Goods, Samples Dry Goods, and or a few of the stores that were in business there years ago. And how I think it was the Moore Drug Store that had a doctor in the back of their building.
Well, there was 3 drug stores in Ringling at one time. Moore Drug Store, Tucker, and J.D. Hanna.
Yes.
Moore Drug Store and J.D. Hanna was right across the street from each other, and the Tucker Drug Store was just down the street. There's 3 drug stores there. And we had a theater there one time. I owned it for a couple of years. A theater there in Ringling.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, you know, Wilson at one time had 2 theaters here in town. It's hard to believe now we don't have any. But, so Ringling never did have 2, just the one.
Just the one.
Well, who are some of the people that you went to school with that might still live in the Ringling area?
Well, there's not very many of them that still lives over there. There's Cecil Colson. He and I lived right across the street from each other there in Ringling. He was about a year older than me, but we went to school together and played football and basketball together in high school. And then there's John D. Garrison. He was another friend of mine. Went to school together. And, well, shoot, I could, if I just could think.
Uh-huh.
I could
Well, I
remember.
caught you off guard there on asking you about that, but
We had I never will forget, we had an old man that was our high school principal. Oh, he was a cranky old rascal. Did none of us like him. He was just strict, that's all. He made us kind of settle down, quieten down when we went into his class.
uh-huh.
And we didn't like him at all. And I tried to get a back seat all the time, way back there, so he couldn't hear us whispering and talking.
Because you'd get in trouble, right?
Yeah. I never will forget my last few years in high school. I made all-state football and all-state basketball for 2 years. And I broke track record twice in the quarter of a mile, running the quarter of a mile in track.
Uh-huh.
And I went to Oklahoma A&M. I was going to go up there to study law. And I went up there and just played. I wasn't studying law or nothing. I was just playing. Of course, I wasn't married then, and I was looking at the girls. And when I come home one time, my dad, he said, "LB," I said, he said, "Ain't you about finished with your school up there?" I said, "No, I got 2 more years." "Oh, shit," he said, something like that. He said, "Why don't you come home?" and said, "We need you down here." Well, he was getting old, and he was running the ranch then. And he wanted me to come down there and take it over. Well, I finally did, but I was having time up there going to school.
And especially with all the girls.
Yeah. My dad was pretty well fixed financially, and he kept me in money so I could play up there, But he wanted me to come home and go to work. I knew that. But we was running about 1,200 head of cattle then, and had a bunch of horses, a bunch of running horses.
Well, LB, now during this time that you were going to school, that was around the time that most people were having it rough during the Depression, during
Yeah. It was in the 20s, and well, I graduated in 1931.
Okay, and most people in this area were still what's called hubbing it. They were really having a rough time.
Yeah.
But your family didn't seem to.
Well, we owned
suffer.
our ranch and our cattle and horses, and we more or less lived off the ranch.
And okay, you were telling me that during the gasoline, you said your family always had cars and trucks, and
Yeah.
and of course before that came along the Surrey with the fringe on top, carriage and everything.
Well, that was before my time.
Yes, but had cars and trucks. But you said that when most people were being rationed for gasoline, that since your family were raising cattle for food,
Yeah.
they didn't have any problem getting
Yeah,
any
we
gas.
we got stamps. They issued stamps, then. And on account of us raising food products, why, they granted us so many
Stamps.
stamps.
And you couldn't buy gasoline if you didn't have the stamps.
That's right.
And the stamps worked kind of along like these food coupons today, except they were small, just about the size of a postage
just a regular
stamp.
stamp, yeah.
And if you didn't have that stamp, you were issued, each family were issued so many stamps.
Yeah.
But so evidently y'all, your family received more stamps because of raising the
Ranchers
cattle.
and farmers and people that were raising food for the public were issued the stamps. And people that, you might say little families in a small town, they had trouble getting stamps. Now, if a family had 2 or 3 dependents, they were all issued stamps for each one of those members of the family. And it was kind of a bad time during that time.
Well, and you probably didn't have trouble getting tires, or did you have trouble getting tires?
Yeah, they were rationed too.
Really rationed.
Yeah.
And the roads were bad then, so.
Dirt, gravel roads. We see the highway from Ardmore to Ringling was gravel for years. Yeah.
And okay, LB, you told me that you have written some books. You've written some stories.
Yeah.
And those stories were published in the True West magazine.
Yeah.
What did they relate about? What were they?
On Western life.
On the early frontier?
Yeah, cowboys and early day history.
So
I'll try to dig out some of those old magazines and see if I can bring them and let you see them.
Okay, and you also told me that the recipe that Belle Starr gave your grandmother when she was in jail, and you had the copy of the original writing of Belle Starr.
I've got it.
And you said that the Historical Society, you told how you were in the Oklahoma Historical Society.
Yeah.
They wanted to purchase that from you.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't sell it.
No, the family wouldn't let me.
Well, I can see why. They also, some of your paintings, your painting of Tucker's Tower is a beautiful painting. I see you have it hanging over your fireplace.
It's an old landmark, historical landmark, and the bank in Ardmore wants it, but the kids won't let me sell it.
They realize that that's Dad's painting, and yes. Yeah. And what was it you were telling me that someone said, well, you could paint another one just like it?
Yeah, yeah.
But then...
Oh, I sold a painting to a lady up in Nebraska, and she wrote me about 2 weeks later, wanted to know if she could get a copy of that painting. I said, well, you can take a photograph of it yourself. No, I want a painting, a copy of it. And I said, no, you won't get it from me. I said, if I paint you a copy, just like that painting you've got, your painting won't be worth $50 because it'll just be copied, a copy. She said, oh no, then we better not do that. She said she's going to have some blown up photographs made of it, colored photographs.
Well, I noticed that when the Tucker Tower is beautiful. Did you go down and sit down there and look at it? And...
I run that teepee house for 2 years right across the water from it.
Oh, did you? Yeah. So you saw Tucker Tower. Yeah. No wonder you had
I sat there and looked at it for many times.
First-hand view. Well, it's perfect. It's the exact replica.
You know, I said I run the teepee house down there, the little eating place down there on the lake.
I remember where it was.
Well, it's right straight across from the Tucker Tower.
And it was had an old teepee up on top of it.
And I put a couple of tables out there in the yard to serve people if they wanted to be served outside. And people come up there that wasn't even going to stop and eat, but they'd come up there to eat, stay there, sit and drink and eat, just to look at that Tucker Tower.
Yeah. Was it relaxing?
I had a pretty good business. I run that thing 2 years, and man alive, I sure was doing business. I was going to spread out and build on to it some more. And as some people kept coming down there wanting to buy it, I thought my wife was still living then, and I told her, I said, let's just sell it. We'll just ask them a lot more than it's worth. And they don't want it, all right. If they do, well, we'll sell it. So then people bought it. And they stayed open about a month.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, some people, they see what's going on, but they just don't have the personality and the finesse in running a business. And
well, I cook barbecue. I'm a barbecue cook.
I've eaten some of your barbecue. Yes, it's delicious.
And I had a barbecue pit right outside the cafe. And you could smell that drift across that water, and people smell it. They'd come in there in them boats and come up and eat with me all the time. And I was doing a land office business. Well, when I sold that place, the people I sold it to just didn't know how to barbecue to start with, and they didn't know how to meet people. And they just ruined the business.
Well, that's a shame. Well, L.B., you've had a very varied life. You have. Is there anything that you haven't done that you would have liked to have done?
I guess I might have done the things that I shouldn't have done.
But there's not anything that you haven't done that you would have liked to have done? I think
Well,
you've done just about everything.
Things that I like to do and wanted to do, I did accomplish some of them. And
You wanted to write, and you wrote poetry,
Yeah.
you've been an artist, and a great, outstanding cook, and with all of that, and I know that you just, you told me once, well, gee, after going over your life, you may have accomplished something. I think you've accomplished quite a lot, and I'm proud that we have shared your life with the viewers and with your family, because sometimes when we have someone right with us, we don't realize how much they have accomplished in their life and what all they have done. Then when we look back and reminisce and see, and especially see it on tape or see it run before us, we realize what that person has done in their life and what they have meant to make in history. People of your generation, and I'm catching you fast, but people of your generation have made Oklahoma history. And that is what my attempt is to do, is to bring people like you onto the show and tell it the way it was and share with our younger generation of how life really was, because it's a way of life that's gone. Your way of life and the way you were raised and the way you worked in your younger years is gone. That can't be recaptured, can it?
right.
And see, you remember Ringling, Wilson, and Hilton being made.
Yeah.
And so that is what we have strived to share with our readers, our viewers, and we hope that you will join us each week. Sometimes, due to unforeseen circumstances, the program is aired at a little later time than 8:30, but it's on normally every week on Tuesday mornings from 8:30 to 9. We thank you for joining us again today for the remainder part, or most of the remainder of Lucian B. Jackson's life. And thanks for joining us. Remember,